the first shed of our Twilight cameras. Hello and welcome to New Forest Morphs. Today we're going to continue with our care series of filming, and we're going to talk about setups for hatchlings. And this beautiful hatchling we've got here her name is Isa, and she is a desert ghost, and I think she's a Enchi desert ghost, and she's het for caramel as well. And we bought her literally about 2 months ago from Marco at his business in Belgium, and I think she's absolutely gorgeous. Beautiful morph, absolutely stunning colours. And we're just going to show you the setup that we're using here at New Forest Morphs for setting up hatchlings. And we're going to start off with this 8 litre box. 9 litre box, sorry, which is from Hobbycraft. They're about £6, and they come with a lid, and that's important if you're going to be keeping your ball python on a table, that you retain the lid. And it's important to actually have little clip-ons, because snakes are notorious for using their heads to lift up their lids and escape, and the last thing you need is an escapee ball python on your hands. But they're very docile animals, they're very friendly. She's lovely, and she's going to feature big time in our desert ghost projects. You can see how beautiful the desert ghost is, and the gene on these animals is such that they get better with age. So as she gets older, she'll get brighter and more beautiful. I think she's a lovely animal. What's your thoughts, Jared?
Yeah, she's pretty pretty.
Yeah, really happy with her. She's eating rat fluffs at the moment, and she's doing really well. I don't think she's missed a meal since we've had her.
No.
So thanks to Marco, who's supplied such a wonderful animal for us. But let's get back to the setup. And the setup that we've got here, we start off with a 9 litre rub. They're called rubs because it stands for really useful boxes. That's RUB, really useful boxes. And as I say, you can get them from Hobbycraft for about £6. So that's your little home for a hatchling. Now Jared, what size can you keep a snake in here? From what size would you go up to on this one?
I wouldn't go any more than 800 grams in one like this. Okay.
Yeah, so as they get bigger, you want to then increase the size of the rub. So what would you take an 800 gram from a 9 litre to what size would you go? Next step up?
It depends. If they're eating really well, maybe I'll try a 33 litre. If not, you can get 18, but they're a lot less common to find.
Yeah. Okay, so what are we using here in our collection, Jay? You can see up here we've got various adults.
So these are all in 33 litre rubs.
They're 33 litre rubs, so you can take...
Our babies are in 9 litres, so they just go from 9, when they get about 800 grams, 900 we move them over into these.
Now I've heard of stories where people have moved their snakes onto 33 litre rubs and they go off food. Now what's the reason for that, Jared? What would cause a snake to go off food when you change their environment?
It could be stress, it could be they're not used to a big environment, they need a smaller one, so they might not eat food. Ball pythons like being in tight enclosures, so it makes them feel comforted.
So, you know, a new person coming into the hobby might look at this and think, how on earth can a snake, even up to 100 grams, be happy in such a small space? But in the wild, Jared, where do these animals actually spend most of their time, and what kind of environment?
Rat burrows under the ground.
Yeah. And they're normally in quite small spaces, and they hunt at night and come out. So as long as you take your snake out on a regular basis and you give them the space to explore like we're doing at the moment, they're very happy and content. As long as you get all your heat and your humidity right, and you get the enclosure set up correctly with the right water, and we'll go through everything with you, these animals are incredibly happy in small spaces, and they are solitary. You don't necessarily want to mix ball pythons with each other only when it's time for breeding, but they are solitary animals and they live on their own, and they find a partner during the breeding season when they're ready. So we'll only introduce one ball python into another rub when we want to pair, and that's the only reason that you'd put 2 together. The other option you have, and we won't cover it on this video, is you can actually use a viv, which is like a quite a larger enclosure, where you can make it look beautiful with various planting, lots of different areas for the animal to move. But they actually say in many cases ball pythons don't necessarily feel as comfortable in large spaces because they feel insecure. So we've gone for the rub approach, and we've had success with it. So we know that the animals are very happy and content, they're eating and shedding normally, and we're going to stay with this formula. We may set up a viv in our reptile house at some point, and if we do, we'll definitely do a video on that. But let's just go with the rub approach. So we've got the 9 litre rub. I say this has a lid that you can clip down if you're going to set it up on a bedroom table. The nice thing about the rub, what are the advantages of having a smaller rub, Jared?
They're a lot cheaper than tanks, and ball pythons, when they grow bigger, they'll need new tanks. So getting one of these for a baby is ideal, and then when they get fully grown, then you can look at a viv or something like that to save money. Yeah,
that's true. Now let's say you're living in a small space. Say you're a student in London, or you're studying, or you might be you might have a bedroom, so your parents might be happy for you to have a snake in your bedroom but nowhere else in the house. So the nice thing about having the rub system is that if you've got a small bedroom and you just have a small table next to your study desk, you can actually have your pet living quite happily next to you when you're studying, and you can have a break from your studies and you can enjoy your pet. So the nice thing about the rub scenario is that it allows people to enjoy their pets in a safe, clean environment without necessarily having a lot of space around them. And I think that's a massive advantage on these particular ball pythons. Now, ball pythons don't grow too big. I think they go maximum of 6 feet, and I think the biggest I've heard of is 6 kilograms, but the average ball python will be between 1,500 and 2,500 grams. So when you're buying a snake, if you go for a male, it's likely that you can keep the male between 12 and 1,500 grams if you've got a small space. If you've got more space, the female will go, they go quite big. But it's like anything, it's how you feed them and how often you feed them that determines their body weight as well. So there are some parameters that you can control the size of your snake, but obviously you want to make sure it's healthy and eating well. Well, there we go. So she's lovely, isn't she, Chad?
Yeah.
So we'll give probably, in this video, we'll bring out 2 or 3 hatchlings to give them a little bit of therapy, if you like. It's nice for them to be out and us enjoying them, and we'll probably bring out 3 or 4 in the course of this video. So I'll put this one back, and then we'll get a little bit hands-on the box. So if you just bear with me, Jared. There you go. She's back in her enclosure. She's had a nice 5-10 minutes of time out. Now the other thing is, that leads me on to one of the important things, is actually washing your hands or using some form of antibacterial hand rub, so that when you're moving from one state to the other, you should really clean your hands. I'm just going to clean my hands. There won't be a second. Jared, why don't you just talk through some of the other things on the table?
Okay. So we've got the 9 litre rub, as Dad's already shown. We then have a heat mat, and we'll show later on in the video how to set this all up. But usually with a heat mat, you want to go just under half the size of the rub, like that. So it's just under half, so they get a nice temperature gradient. So what's the benefit of using a mat as opposed to an overhead heating bulb? Or well, ball pythons and most snakes like belly heat, so this allows them to lay on something and get belly heat there. It's also more constant, more accurate as well, in my opinion.
Okay, and because they come from is it West Africa, the heat that they're used to, let's say, what's the ideal heat for a ball python?
Hotspot, you're looking about 89, 90 degrees Fahrenheit.
Yes.
And then you want about 78, 80 at the cool spot.
Okay, so as Jared was explaining, so if we just take the lid off for now, I'll just show you how that works. So what you'd do is, say you're setting this up on a table, you'd obviously place your heat mat there, and then you'd use aluminium tape, which is excellent at conducting heat, and you'd tape it to your table, so like that, and maybe one along there. I think you'd get away with two, one on each side.
Yeah.
And then,
if you're a perfectionist like me, you've got to do all corners, but
okay.
But you can get away with 2.
Yeah, one on each side, as long as it's secure, not going to move anywhere. Then you've got your heat mat exactly in the position on the table that you want that to be, and then you can put your 9 litre rub on there, and you'll see that represents a third of the, if you come in on the top, Jared, you can see that represents about a third of the length of the rub. So you've got 2/3 and 1/3. So that's called the heat spot there. And the heat spot is the main place where the snake will reside. But the snake has the opportunity to move down. So as it's moving this way, so if I could just do an overhead shot, Jared, as the snake moves down, it cools off here. So that might be, say, 90 degrees. That could be like 84, 83, 82, 81, 80, 78, 77. That could go down to as low as 75 there. It really depends on the temperature outside in your bedroom or in your house as well, which is called the ambient temperature. And the ambient temperature, which is the temperature outside the box, is very important to get that right as well. So it's not just about the heat mat, it's making sure that the snake has a gradient so it can decide whether it wants to stay hot or cool down, and then you can then control that by making sure that you use a thermostat. And that leads us to our third piece of kit. Now where did we put the thermostat? I think the thermostat's under here. So here's your thermostat. Jared, just talk us through the thermostat, starting with the control panel.
So we've chosen an Inkbird thermostat, just one that's available on Amazon, works for us. We use them for our hatchling racks, as you can see over there.
Is it digital, that one?
It's digital, these ones, yeah. I prefer the digital ones. You can get analog ones. We have those for our adult tanks.
Yeah.
Over there, Haberstats. Okay. But I quite like the analog because you can see. I just like analog. I like digital.
Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch places with Jared, and he's going to show you physically how to put this together. We'll leave the camera on, Jared. We'll just switch, and okay. That's it. Thank you, Jared. Right, we're going to move across and actually plug everything in as well. See how this is going to work. So let's assume it's taped down for now.
Okay. Get this all plugged in.
Now we'll get that plugged in.
Okay, so this is what the display looks like. And if you hold down the set button, you can then set the temperature you want it. So to start off with, I start on 30 degrees. And when it reaches that, we can then check the temperature of the tub and make sure that it's right. And then you hold down set again.
How long do you hold that down for?
Just until it stops flashing. 5 seconds.
Okay.
And it'll come on. So right now, the probe is reading at 22.4 degrees. Obviously, as you heat that up, it will also rise. So it's 22.5, 23, okay. So that's my hand.
So
the probe here,
yeah,
it's very important that you put it somewhere on the black part of the heat mat. So the black part is going to give you the heat. So what you want to do is you want to put it there and tape it down so it's nice and secure in there, and your rub's not going to knock it off.
Mm-hmm. So does that prevent the mat from just going up and up and up in temperature? So it will switch off at 90?
Yep, and it will switch off at 90, and if that's the correct temperature for the snake that you need, then it will stop it from burning or getting too hot, and it will also stop it from getting too cold.
Okay, so that makes sense. And that probe is connected to the thermostat control?
Thermostat. Right. And the final part of the heating element is to plug in the heat mat to your thermostat.
Let's do that. Let's just get it working, and we can see the temperature going up over the course of the video. So Jared's got the probe on there.
I need to put a little bit of tape on if we want to do it properly.
I'll hold it. Just put a bit of tape on there, Jared. Now, while we're doing that, some people like the idea of putting the probe inside the rub, and I'm not too keen on that personally, but I've seen people actually super glue they drill a hole in the box and they thread the probe through, and they actually tape it down or super glue it to the inside.
Tape inside of an enclosure, just because if it comes off and it touches the snake,
yeah,
it can damage the scales.
Okay.
Also, I'm not sure about super glue either, because I think it can be damaging.
What, toxic?
Yeah, to the actual snake. So I personally go as natural as possible and keep it outside of the tub, but okay, everyone has their own preferences.
Well, there we go. So Jared's just showing you attach the probe with some tape. So now let me just feel the heat on there. I can feel it warming up. Have you plugged that in?
Yeah, it's plugged in.
So that's warming up. And now look at the temp. Jared set the bottom is the maximum temp it's going to go to, which is 30, and then this is degrees
currently at.
Can you set that in Celsius and Fahrenheit?
Only Celsius on these ones. It's a UK
So
product.
what we're aiming for, 90 degrees Fahrenheit is about 30 degrees Celsius?
Just a bit more. I set it at 30 first because sometimes it changes.
Okay.
Sometimes it's not completely accurate, so you want to figure out what it is and stick to that. So you see here, there's on these rubs there's a notch in here.
Yeah.
What's perfect with that is the notch fits perfectly where that probe is.
Oh, okay.
So it will never knock it off.
That's perfect. Well, thank you for explaining that, Jared. So that's really helpful. Let's go through the next step. So once you've got your heat, we'll keep an eye on the temps. It's gone up to 27.6. Now, I think we should move on to the heat gun next, you think would be the best thing?
So this is how we check our temperatures. They're a lot more accurate than the analog probes. So you just squeeze the trigger, shows you what the temperature is. So the room right now is about 72. We've got the windows open for some aeration, but it stays around 72, 75 in here. That's our ambient temperature.
Yeah.
And obviously, right now we've only just turned it on, but it's already heated up that part of the tub to 74.
Mm-hmm.
And that side over there is just less, 72.
Yeah, it's only just starting to
heat up. So it will heat up, and you're looking for it to get to about 90, 89, 90 is ideal.
Okay.
But these are definitely worth purchasing one. They're only about 8-9 quid.
And that's Fahrenheit, isn't it?
That's Fahrenheit. You can also choose centigrade on these.
Let's keep it all in centigrade, so your heat gun is matching the thermostat, otherwise it's going to be confusing. So let's just say 22 at the moment.
So it's 23, 24, 25.
So it's
about 25.5.
So it's 25.5, whereas when I look at that it says it's 27.5. Why is there a 2 degree difference?
That is the temperature of the actual heat mat. But the heat mat has to heat up the actual plastic at the bottom.
Okay.
So if we actually look at the heat mat temperature,
yeah,
the heat mat says it's 27. So
yeah, which is in line with what it's saying on the digital readout. So what you're saying is you lose 2 degrees between the air and the plastic going in to heat. So the snake actually is 2 degrees cooler inside than what's showing on the.
It does change. You've got to keep on top of your temperatures. Because sometimes they change and you have to adjust it, and that's no problem. You just got to check it every day, a couple of times a day.
So would you recommend upping that to 32?
When it reaches 30, we'll check it.
Yeah.
If it's not hot enough, we'll turn it up. Because sometimes the actual display isn't the same as what the temperature is.
Oh, okay.
So you got to go by trial and error.
Are the temperature guns very reliable?
The guns are right. We've got 3 of them, and they all show the same temperature.
And what would that cost you for one of those temperature guns?
About £10.
£10. What are your best investments? Have even a second one on to hand, or make sure you've got some batteries in case you run out of batteries, because they are. And you should be checking your temperatures every day, really, shouldn't you?
Yeah. So we're up to 26.
So it's building
inside. So it's building up.
Okay. So while that's building up, Chad, talk us through the next stage. So you've got your heat map starting to work. You've got everything plugged in.
Obviously, you make it look nicer.
What's that cooling thing?
So this is actually used for brewing alcohols and stuff.
Oh, okay.
So if you got to cool it at a certain temperature, you can cool it. Or if you're in a really hot country and the temperatures are too hot, you can change it.
Okay. So
for usually the most cases you put it on the heating side.
Okay.
On the heat mat.
All right.
If you put it in the cooling, it won't work.
Okay. And what about if you wanted to run one thermostat off, let's say 5 rubs? So you had 5 snakes on one thermostat.
As long as you've got the exact same mat and the exact same size, it should be all right. Yeah. You plug a extension lead into this, and then you plug all of your heat mats into the extension lead.
And then you number them 1 to 5.
Number them however you want to do it.
So you can know which one relates to which rub. So some people don't buy a thermostat for every individual cage.
Yeah, we don't. We have maybe for every 5 layers.
Yeah. Okay.
Which is about right.
Okay. So let's go on to the next step. We've got this starting to happen. What's the next step you have in setting up?
So next you want to get a substrate. We use paper towels, a good quality one that can, when it gets wet, it doesn't just disintegrate. And we like paper towels because if there's any ever problem with the snake, you can tell immediately. They're good, easy to clean. They're a cheap, affordable way of doing it. You can use cocoa husk, things like that, but we prefer this way ourselves.
Yeah, and it's blitz that we use.
We use blitz.
That's the best. I've noticed you curve it up around the edge as well. Is that because they poo and wee and it's easier to clean? So if they poo in the corner, you're not spending 10 minutes cleaning out the poo in the corner. You're basically picking up the tissue and the poo comes off with it. It's a lot easier to clean.
Yeah,
that's a little tip for you guys. You know, put in a couple of sheets of blitz and make sure it's going around the edge, and you'll find it's a lot easier to clean. Okay, so that's good. What's the next stage?
With baby ball pythons, they can be quite shy. So we like to give them hides. Here we got just some plastic little hides. And we like to have one on the hot spot and one on the cold end as well.
And what's the advantage of that?
It just gives them a place to hide, a place to feel safe. I often find babies, if they're not eating very well, you give them a hide and they'll start smashing the food again.
I suppose if you live in an egg for, was it 60 days, and you're used to being in an egg.
Especially if you're in a room that's light, you want to have hides.
Right.
Because they like the darkness, and if you've got light in your room all the time, in here we can set it how we like. But in a normal home, there's going to be light coming through.
So we have a purpose-built snake facility here and hardly any windows, and so we can make it as dark or as light as we want it to be.
Exactly.
But not everyone has that, but the hides are very helpful. So
hides are very
coming back to the substrate, what's the main purpose of the substrate, Jared? Because obviously it soaks up their urine and it soaks up all the thing, but also when they're shedding, how can you use the substrate to help them when they're shedding?
If they're shedding, you can put a bit of water on the warm spot, and that will increase the humidity. You don't want to do too much, but you can do a little bit, and it'll help them when they shed. So
what humidity levels should you try to maintain on football pythons? What are they like?
They recommend about 55 to 60%.
Okay.
Humidity.
And how do you know whether you're getting that right? What's the best way of doing that?
Well, there's different ways. A lot of people eyeball it. They say, if my snake's shedding fine, then it's fine.
Yeah.
We just bought one of these. Not sure if they work, but we're going to try it out. It's called a hydrometer.
£5, it's not bad. Let's have a little look at that. Will that give right, sorry, we had a battery change there, but we're back on now. So we've got this, what's it called?
It's a hygrometer or hydrometer.
Okay.
Not sure how to pronounce it.
Yeah, and that will give you a digital reading of the percentage content in the air of water to air, basically.
Yeah.
So if it's,
we'll try it out.
So you recommend no more than 55, 60%?
Yeah, you don't want to go less than 50% really in a tub.
Okay.
In England, we're pretty lucky. It's quite humid, so
yeah,
we're pretty good. But when you notice your snake going into blue or shedding,
yeah,
it helps giving them a bit of help, water them down a bit.
Okay, let's see. The temperature's now going up, Jared. It's gone up to 29.
29.8.
Yeah.
So we only just put the paper in.
And what's
so
that?
We're looking at about 26, 27 on the actual paper right now.
Okay.
So we'll come back and hopefully it'll be warmer. We might have to turn the temperatures up a little bit, but it's trial and error.
Okay. So talking about water, how much water does a ball python need, and what should you use for your water supply?
Well, they like to drink daily, so we always make sure they've got a clean. We've got here, if anyone likes cheesecakes, go down to Tesco's, get yourself some cheesecakes, make sure they're thoroughly cleaned. And these work perfect in baby tubs or rubs. So we pop that in there, roughly on the cold end.
I mean, the snake can move it up and down. That's the other thing about having a non-fixed water container is if a snake wants warm water, it'll take it up to this end and it will then be able to warm up the water for itself if it needs extra humidity as well. Or if it wants to cool down, it will move it down, it will bowl wrap, it will go in. And a lot of ball pythons do like to actually bathe in there, don't they, Jared?
Yeah, they like to bathe. And then we just fill it up to about there, 3/4. And that's to prevent spillage, isn't it? Because if you spill too much water, you can get a bit wet. You don't want to get them wet and cold. They could get an RI, they could get problems. So
okay. So
keep it dry, but a little bit humid in there.
Is it okay to use tap water, or should you use bottled water?
Tap water is absolutely fine.
Okay.
If you can drink it, they can drink it.
Right. Okay. I mean, I know some breeders actually use bottled water because they want to give all the minerals, and they don't want a high calcium. Because some of the water, if you're in a chalk stream, which we are, here in the New Forest, you get a lot of calcium in there. But they do need calcium. They get calcium when they're eating their rats and things, don't they? So
yeah, our snakes are all fine on tap water.
Yeah,
haven't had a problem with them. So
if you live somewhere in the world where the water supply isn't good and you've got to drink bottled water, you may want to consider using bottled water for your snakes. Yeah, because obviously you don't want to give them anything which might give them issues.
Yeah.
Water quality is everything for any animal. The better the water quality, the better the health. and check on a daily basis, because they
can tip their water bottles over, so you want to make sure they got water.
Yeah. Okay, now the other thing is with coming to humidity, if you're living in somewhere like Colorado, there's a guy I'm following on YouTube that has to use moss, special type of moss.
Sphagnum moss?
Is it sphagnum moss?
Yeah.
So he uses that for two reasons. Number one, he's got a really dry climate, and therefore it's very hard to maintain humidity in the tank. So he basically puts in a moss, a damp moss, in a ball.
Yeah.
And it allows the snake to also assist on shedding. It goes through that, and I think they use that quite effectively. So
it releases moisture.
Yeah.
Slowly.
And in the wild, they'll be looking for that kind of environment.
Yeah, similar to a sponge, really.
Yeah. So that's something you may want to consider. The other thing is people do put in leaves, sometimes even plastic foliage inside, to give them a little bit more cover, protection, and also an area to play. So you could put in toys for them.
This is a very basic setup here.
Yeah.
Very basic. This is the simple setup. But you can add to it. Just make sure it's pet friendly and reptile friendly.
Yeah.
You do put things in.
Absolutely.
Don't just go pick up some sticks off the street and put them in.
So I mean, it's pretty straightforward, really. I mean, it's quite simple. That probably costs no more than £40 to set up a habitat. So if you think about the mat's probably, I don't know, tenner. These two are 5 each. That's 10. That's 20. That's virtually nothing because we had cheesecake, £1, 21. The thermostat, Chad. How much was the thermostat?
They're about 28 quid.
Okay, that's taking us to 50. And then your heat gun's probably another 10,
another tenner.
60. And then what about if you want to go for your what are they called?
Hygrometer.
That's a £5, so that's 65. So just for the enclosure and everything else, you're probably looking at about 70 quid, aren't you?
Yeah.
Somewhere around about there, which I think is very good.
That's where having a rack or something like that comes in handy, because you can run them all off the same thermostat, so it saves money in the long run.
Yeah. So let's go on to some other accessories, Jazz. I'm going to pass the camera back to you.
Yep.
And then let's go through. Thank you, Jared, for sharing that knowledge with us. I've only been doing this a year myself. Okay. Jared's been doing it for 4 years. What we're going to do is check the temperature, Jared. Now that it's up to 30, what's the inside temperature? You want to?
It's 25, 26. So.
Okay, so it's 25, 26. That's not quite warm enough, is it? You want to get to close to 30.
It usually takes about an hour to heat up fully. And then you've got to check it again later.
Yeah, but let's look at the controls. It's now 29.7. So how do we get that up?
By the way, it doesn't flash in real life. Just for some reason on the camera, it makes it flash. Don't know why.
Can you increase that to 32 for me now? And then we'll check temperature. So how do you increase?
So you hold down set.
Set for how long?
5 seconds. 5 seconds? Maybe 3, 5.
Yeah.
And it starts flashing like that. That's how it actually flashes on the screen.
And then you go up.
And you get up. You can hold it down.
So it's in 1/10.
It goes up to 32.
Let's say 32, and then you press set again.
Till it stops flashing. Like that.
So now it's going above 30. So that's the maximum the heat will go, as long as the thermostat's working. What happens if somebody knocks your probe off?
If someone knocks your probe off, you'll notice that the temperature in the actual tub is really high, but it doesn't read high on here. So that's why you've got to check your temperature often to make sure that you never have that issue.
So if your probe, or if your thermostat breaks, or your probe gets broke, that's why these are so important. Check the heat anyway.
Yeah.
This is your backup.
Daily.
So let's check.
A couple times a day.
Now I'm checking now, we're building up to 26.5.
Yeah, it will take time. It takes time to get hot.
We'll come back to that. So I'm going to go through some other stuff that you need when you set up your tank. So Jared obviously showed you, get yourself a little watering can for your water.
Funny story about this one. It used to be a nice circular hole. I turned my back on a hatchling for 1 second and it climbed on in, so I had to hacksaw it out.
Yeah. Okay. Your blitz, get a few rolls of that in, so you've got plenty of blitz. It's about £1.50, or I think it's £3 for 2.
Yeah.
From Tesco's or Sainsbury's. We like it. It fits perfectly in these rubs as well. So when you've got a 33 litre rub,
side by
side, 2 of those there will fit a larger rub perfectly, and you put 2 either side and it fits in perfect. And these are very strong and very absorbent, so when they wee in there, it picks up all the wee, and when you clean, you literally go in with gloves, sweep it up, put it in the bin. And then that leads me on to the next thing that you need, is you need to get some reptile safe disinfectant. Have you got some down there, Jared? So there we go, we're using this one here, clean safe.
Well, that's not actually what's in there. What we have is something called F10.
F10?
Yeah, I'll show you.
Okay.
Here you go, F10 SC. This is a veterinary one. You can buy it online. You've got to dilute it, so you put 2 millilitres in, mix it with water, and job's done.
Okay, and use those little chambers there to do that, do you? Let's have a look at the quality of what we've got there. And how much did that cost?
I think that's about £15, but that will last you forever.
How long would that last roughly?
Well, it's 200 millilitres, and you only use 2 millilitres to fill up one of those.
So 100 times.
100 of those.
So you get 100 of those out of there. That's much cheaper. You'd pay £5 for that.
Yeah.
But that would cost you less than £1 if you. But please dilute it.
Dilute it.
Correctly, because if you don't dilute it and you put in an overdosage, you could kill your snake. So make sure you're getting your dilution right on that. Now there are some other things that we use for looking after snakes. Now I very rarely bring this out. It's mainly for venomous snakes, but that's a snake hook. Okay, and it's a telescopic one. The main reason I use it is because I've got a hip issue and the rubs at the bottom, I find it hard to get down. So I just do this. So I'm going to literally hook out, pull out the snake like that. It saves my back. But if a snake thinks you're feeding it, I mean, we could do a demonstration if you like. Let's try and find what it might want to feed. And let's say the best way of actually preventing a snake from biting you is to use a nice gentle tool that you can gently ease it down. I often use the paper towels as well. So let's take Venus down here. So she is the mother of those beautiful clutch we've showed. She's a twilight. She's not in eating mode at all. So I don't need to do that. But let's say she was coiled to eat and I didn't want to get bitten by her. Then I would very gently just put this down towards her, and a little tap on her head without hurting her would make her go into a docile mode and know it's not feeding time. So it's useful to know these skills because you can avoid getting bitten if you have the right approach. Now I have got a snake here that does look like she wants to be fed, and her name is Digit. Bring her out, watch her come out. There she is, see? There's Digit. She might think she's going to get some food, so I just gently say, go down. Well, she wants to play. There you go. So you use the hook just to control the snake. You can put her back, and then, no, not eating, darling. And you can go like that. Now she's quite a character. She wants to come out and play. I don't think she wants to eat. She literally wants to come out and play.
Yeah. Or you can do this if you want.
Yeah. You don't need to use a hook because these are non-venomous. If you get bitten, it doesn't hurt that much. I've never been bitten, but I've been told it doesn't hurt.
Yeah, it doesn't hurt. I can confirm that. At least from a baby. I haven't been bit by a big one yet. So.
I wonder if Colossus might want to be coming out and feeding. See if she's up for food. No, she's happy in there.
No, we're just chilling.
Yeah. Anyway, we'll get back to the main caring. But that's the use of one of these, mainly for my back and my hip. But you can use it to help control your snakes. I tend to, if I think that a snake is misreading me and thinks it's going to eat me or bite me, I'm using a bit of this, and you go in and you just literally just gently tap them down, and once they get tapped, they change from feeding instinct to friendly instinct. And the way you know if a ball python's going to want to food, normally when they want their food, they get into this S-shaped circular spring motion. They're loading the spring to spring out and catch the food. So if they're at the front of their rub and they're like this, you can bet your bottom dollar they think they're going to be fed. So that's not a good idea to put your hand in to get the snake out, because your fingers could be misread as rats, and that's how people get bitten. So you've got to read their body language, and literally something like that, just going down like that, would just change the whole mindset from being one predator to just being a tame, docile animal. It's incredible, but it works. Let's go through some other things that we've gone through. Feeding. Now we're going to do a separate feeding video on how to feed, but this is what I use for feeding. Now, ball pythons do have teeth, so I've got a pair of quite long tongs, and they're no more than about £5, something like that, down to £7 maybe.
Yeah, you're looking about 5 to 10.
Yeah, you can get different styles.
I use one with rubber tips, but they're a bit more grippy.
Yeah, I find them uncomfortable, the rubber tip ones. Jared likes them, but I suppose the rubber tip ones, you get a snake that hits hard the food.
Protects their teeth.
It does protect their teeth, so you could get some rubber ones, but I find them very wide and I'm awkward. I'm always dropping my food. I find these a lot easier, and I just make sure that I hold it in such a way that when a snake comes and grabs, and how you present the food, they wrap around the food, and basically as soon as they've got the snake, I pull away the tongs to avoid an impact, and then they normally take it head first, and then they wrap their body around it. And if you do get a snake that wraps around your tongs, just be careful as you pull those out, because they will come out, but you just be very careful. Once a snake has wrapped its mouth around some food, you can literally hold that snake and put it back into its rub. You know, it's not going to suddenly drop the food and bite you. I've never had that happen. And sometimes they attack their food and they drop it into their water bowl, and I've seen snakes leave food in water bowls because it cools down the prey and they release the food. And the next day you go down and you wonder why they haven't eaten it. So if they drop into their water bowl, you can pick up the head of the snake and you can gently just take it out of the water bowl and put it down on the side, and you'll find he or she will eat that prey. So, Jared, the ball python have heat pits, don't they?
Yeah.
And those heat pits are, I mean, I'll get out, why don't I get out a snake, see if we can identify where the heat pits. I'll get my banana male out. Hello. This is one of my favourite males. We bought him as a hatchling, didn't we, Jared?
Yeah.
At Southampton Reptiles. It cost us about 400 quid. He's a multi-gene powerhouse male. And he's got in there super pastel, orange dream, banana. And I love him so much, and I've been nurturing him for over a year, and we've got a bond, and he is beautiful. And he has just started his breeding cycle, and he's hooked up to the pinstripe, and we've got some video footage of that which we can show you. And I think he's hooked up to 2 girls this year, and we're only in September and he's up for it. He weighs about 800 to 850, which I think is a sensible size to start breeding a male, and we spoke about that in the last video. But his heat pits now, let's see where would you say the heat pits are, Jared? Can you zoom in on his heat pits? Whereabouts are they?
Let me get in focus. Right, see all those little dots down there?
Now just point out that the dots on a banana, the reason why they're called bananas is as they get older they get freckles like a banana. Isn't that right, Chad?
Yeah.
Can you look at these aren't mites. People might think they're mites, but these dots, just to let you know, they're not mites.
Freckles.
They are freckles, and these freckles get on more and more freckles with age. Now, because he's super pastel and he's carrying
the heat pits. Those little, they look like nostrils, but there's plenty of them down there.
Can you see them?
There's heat pits.
Yeah. And what's the purpose of the heat pits, Chad?
It just helps them identify where the food is. That's the main thing, really.
Yeah.
Know if there's any predators out there, things like that.
Yeah. So, because the heat pits mean that they can pick up a live, warm mammal, and so rats are obviously going to provide heat at night. So, although they've got pretty good vision, haven't they, snakes?
I think it's all right.
Yeah, but they rely on the heat to home in on their prey. So when you're feeding, what we tend to do is I use this little jar. Jared uses a bigger one, but I like this jar. And I fill it with boiling hot water up to about here. And then over here I've got some, I'm feeding a bit later tonight. I can just show you this, Jared, if you follow me. And you might find that he might get into feeding mode, but why don't you just show them what we've got over here. Some Maltese defrosting. So they've been out 3 or 4 hours. And tonight we're going to feed a few of our fussy girls who only take Maltese. They're big females that need to get some weight on for the breeding season, so I've got to feed those probably 3 or 4 times a week. Small Maltese, which is the equivalent of 1 meal. They won't take a big rat, and I've learned that I've got to give them small meals, but I've got to give it more often. And I give them probably sometimes 2 in a night, sometimes 4 in about 2 nights, and feed them twice a week. Now that's not power feeding, that's just maintaining and building on that. So sometimes you have to adjust. Normally you feed a snake, a hatchling is fed every 4 days normally, and a adult between every week or every 2 weeks, depending on the size of the prey item that you're going to give them. So you do need to have long tongs. So you dip their head in the hot water, you boil a kettle, you put your rodent's head in that boiling water, you dry the head with your tissue, and then you present using the tongs. Yeah. So you need to get some tongs.
And we'll have a video of how that's done.
Yeah, we'll show how it's done on a feeding night. So there's another bit of gear that you need, and again, they're not that expensive. So I reckon £100 would probably get you the gear to start your hobby.
Yeah.
And then, depending on the snake you want to go for and how much you want to spend, I mean, you can spend £50,000 on a snake.
Or you can spend 50.
Or you can spend 50 quid.
Or 25 in some places.
Yeah. So it depends. If you want something for your children and not, you know, spend a lot, then obviously you can go for a normal or wild type ball python. You can pick them up for 50 quid. Or if you want something really pretty, like this one was about 400. But he's such a star. He's got a lovely temperament, and I reckon he's going to produce some beautiful babies. The Orange Dream is making him really clean. Can you see the Orange Dream coming out of him? See the oranges?
Yeah.
So Orange Dream, super pastel, gives him the blushing on his head. See the blushing?
Mm-hmm.
And then you've got the banana, which is a gorgeous gene. There's purples, yellows. I think the banana is one of my favourite genes. The first banana that was produced, I think, was sold for nearly $50,000. Now they're affordable. They're about, well, you can get a banana for 200 or 300 quid. A single gene banana. If you want a multi-gene banana, you can pay a lot of money for them. But I'm just thinking, Jad, is there anything else that we haven't mentioned on setup?
I don't think so. I think that's the main setup. Just make sure they got water. Usually feed them once a week, sometimes more.
Yeah.
Make sure you got cleaning products, everything to feed them. Temp gun.
So now we need to just do a final check now. So before we put our snake in, let's check the temperature on the hot mark. It should be near 30 degrees.
It's 28 there.
28. Let me just come out, have another look. See what the heat is showing now, Jared. So it needs to go a bit more, doesn't it? It needs to be closer to 30 on the heat spot.
Yeah, so it's trial and error. You put it up and you keep putting it up until you get it right. And then I recommend doing this at least 24 hours before you get your snake.
Yeah. And the idea is then, if you've got it set up, when the snake comes, he's in a comfortable position straight away.
Exactly.
Oh, there was one other thing that I'd recommend getting, which I didn't put out, which was the spray gun. I know it's down there, so I'll just get that in. Get yourself one of these. These are really helpful. So just to get, for shedding purposes, so say a snake was in shed, you may have to put some extra humidity into the towel like that. Something like that would be enough for them to just shed easier. You don't want to make it too wet for them, but as soon as their eyes go into blue and you can see they're going to shed imminently, it's worth spraying down the animal, and it'll stop them from getting stuck in shed. So get yourself a little spray bottle. And I think that just about wraps up the video, Jared.
Yep, that's it.
Next week we'll be presenting how to feed care video, and we'll show you, we'll actually do a feeding session with you, and we'll show you how to overcome problem feeders as well, the different techniques that we've learned over the years, because you will get one or two fussy eaters, but there are techniques that we can go through that will help you get through feeding issues. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you, Jared, for sharing your information with us. We look forward to seeing you again. Don't forget thumbs up if you enjoyed the video. Please share it with your friends, and don't forget to subscribe. And we'll see you next time.